Cameroon has two major indigenous groups, the Pygmies and the Mbororo. The rights of these people are often being grossly disregarded or violated. Although the government of Cameroon is doing much to make sure that the rights of the indigenous people of Cameroon are being respected, rights advocates say much still needs to be done in that domain. Today on the program, we'll be receiving Balkissou Buba, who is an advocate of the indigenous people of Cameroon. She comes from the Mbororo community of the Northwest Region of Cameroon. I am Lasha Kingsley in Douala, and this is The Agenda. I'll be right back. Balkissou Buba, thanks so much for honoring our invitation. Viewers around the world may want to know who you are. Can you briefly introduce yourself?
My name is Balkissou Buba. I'm the Vice National Coordinator of REPALEAC Cameroon. REPALEAC is the network for indigenous people and local communities for sustainable management of forest ecosystems in Central Africa. I'm also a social worker by profession at the Ministry of Social Affairs. I'm from the Mbororo pastoralist community of the Northwest Region, precisely from Sabga. I live in Yaounde and work in Yaounde. I'm a holder of a bachelor's degree in English Modern Letters from the University of Yaounde 1 and a diploma in social welfare studies obtained from the National Institute of Social Work in Yaounde. I also have different positions. I represent indigenous people at different positions with different structures. I'm the assistant observer for FCPF in French Africa. FCPF is the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility of the World Bank. I'm also representing the indigenous people at the level of the Indigenous People Advisory Committee at the World Bank. I'm also one of the focal points for the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus. I also represent the indigenous people at different levels at United Nations meetings, World Bank meetings, and so on. My name is Balkissou Buba from Cameroon. I work for the protection and promotion of the rights of indigenous people. I'm here today to talk to you about opportunity, and I will relate opportunity to how I got opportunity in life and use this opportunity to give others opportunity. I am from the Mbororo pastoralist indigenous community of Cameroon. Who are indigenous people? There is no universally accepted definition for indigenous people. These are people who are characterized rather than defined, and these characteristics are offered by the United Nations, the Kobo Studies, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, as well as the Convention 169 of the International Labour Organization. The fundamental criterion is self-identification. Their ways of life, customs, and traditions differ from that of the mainstream population. These people live on subsistence production, that is hunting and gathering and pastoral nomadism. They have strong attachment to their ancestral lands, and they live in geographically isolated areas. Indigenous communities face many difficulties, like discrimination, marginalization, social exclusion, lack of land rights, lack of representation in areas of decision-making, and above all, illiteracy. I had the opportunity to go to school and use my knowledge to the benefit of my communities, because in my community, access to education for women is difficult due to discrimination, cultural barriers, and early marriages. I used my education and dedicated my life to working for indigenous communities, and today we have many people who are in schools, like indigenous children and especially women who are in schools. We have an emerging class of educated elites who are empowered, who have access to employment, and this has reduced poverty. Thus, education is a human right that people should respect. To the indigenous man, land is life, and in Cameroon, access, use, and control over land is a difficulty. Today, Customary and community land rights are not recognized. Thus, we suffer from forced relocations due to large-scale land acquisitions, agro-industries, and developmental projects. And this happens to us because we are considered as eternal strangers on our lands. I had the opportunity to actively participate in land right discussions and the ongoing land reform process in Cameroon. And also, I had the opportunity to also work with the International Land Coalition member organizations whose aims are secured and equitable access to and control over land. And thanks to this, the government of Cameroon is listening to us, taking our views into consideration, and I know that in the new land law, we will have pro-poor policies that are in favorable of the indigenous man and also for the royal poor. In terms of alternative livelihood, I carry out alternative livelihood for indigenous women. This has given them the empowerment to learn new skills, teach others, and to be economically empowered. In terms of representation in areas of decision-making, we have been doing a lot. I lobby for employment of indigenous youths. I ensure that no decision concerning us is taken without us. During the last election, I championed a cause in 2014 in Cameroon where I actively participated on increasing the participation of minorities and indigenous people in the elections. And thanks to this, I sensitize people through workshops and radio programs. And today we have about 50 municipal councillors from the indigenous communities. We have a senator and an alternate senator. I will continue to lobby for the implementation of all the internationally signed and ratified treaties, conventions and declarations, as well as elaboration of policies and programs that are in favor of the indigenous minorities. Life is all about opportunity. Let's give the people the opportunity. African leaders, give the youths the opportunity. Give the minorities and indigenous people the voice, and give the vulnerable sectors of society the dignity and respect. Give the women a chance, for they are the leaders leading us to a better tomorrow. As leaders, our actions should inspire people to dream more, do more, and become more.
You are in Mbororo, from the Mbororo community, precisely in the Northwest Region of Cameroon. What is the life of a Mbororo woman like you?
The life of a Mbororo woman is very interesting because the Mbororo woman has several roles. The woman plays, first of all, the role of an educator. The role of an educator because this woman is the person who transmits knowledge from the children, from herself, from the older generation to the younger generation. Language to the children is being transmitted by the mothers. These educative, they have to inculcate values, traditional values, moral values into the children. The Mbororo also has the role of a mother because the women, they get married, they stay in the home, they take care of the children, they take care of the family, they provide food for the family, and they take care of the kids. So they play that role of a mother. They also play another role like ensuring that there is a home for the family, because if you look at traditionally, the Mbororo woman is the person who is supposed to construct a house.
Really? That sounds interesting.
Yeah, the Mbororo women, they have to go look for the material, they come and build the houses where the family lives in. So they are like the bricklayers and of the family. Yeah, so the Mbororo woman, on a day-to-day basis, we have to like get up in the morning, take care of the children, milk the cows first, because you know traditionally the Mbororo women are pastoralists and they have cattle and they live on milk. So they have to get up in the morning, milk the cows, prepare food for the family, and then they take the milk, they sell the milk to the nearby urban cities. They also sell butter, they extract butter from the milk that they sell to the nearby communities for income generating activities that they use this money now to buy food to feed the family. And
it's very rare to have women from the Mbororo community like you, and who have like first gone to school, having first degree and other diplomas in different fields like you do. So how is life? How do you manage your home and the different activities you're involved in?
Very interestingly, Mbororo women were not going to school, but at a certain stage they started going to school. The father saw the need to send the girl child to school, and when my father was among those people who decided to educate the girl child, despite the fact that the community told him he was a deviant, he was like going away from the norms of the community, he still stood his grounds on sending the girls to school. So I was fortunate to be educated. After I went to school, I had a job, and now I work and I'm advocating for the rights of indigenous people. That is one of the things that pushed me to become an advocate for indigenous rights, because I realized my community, the women don't go to school, and the rights of these women are violated. At times, the women suffer violence. They don't even know they are suffering from violence. So that is why I decided to become an advocate in indigenous rights.
You work tirelessly for the rights of the indigenous people in Cameroon. So what is your motivation? Where did your inspiration come from?
My inspiration came as a result of the fact that I first realized girls were not being educated in my community, and I realized I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to go to school. When I went to school and graduated from school, I realized that the education is not supposed to serve me alone as a person. It's supposed to serve my community. The education is for me to help my community come out of the various predicaments they are suffering from. I realized my community was suffering from discrimination, from marginalization, from social exclusion, lack of representation in areas of decision making, lack of land rights, violations of human rights. So all of these problems needed someone to address them. So I decided to take up the challenge and you put my education into use so that I can be able to solve some of these problems for my community, especially in area of women's rights.
Yeah, your organization focuses on environmental protection, land rights, and the protection of in short, to ensure that the indigenous people in Cameroon have a better life. My question to you is, since you embarked on this journey of fighting or advocating for the rights of indigenous people in Cameroon, how many of such rights have you been able to secure?
Since I embarked on this journey as an indigenous rights activist, I have worked with several indigenous organizations. I started with the Delaware Foundation that was advocating for the rights of indigenous people. We were working mostly on environmental issues, climate change, biodiversity conservation. I also work with Mbororo, where they work mostly on human rights. I work with the REPALEAC, which is a network in Cameroon, and the network regroups about close to 40 indigenous organizations, and each organization works with various thematic issues. So mostly, if you look at the problem of land rights, we have been working tirelessly on the issue of land rights because indigenous people, they don't have access, use, and control over land. They can use a land for a particular period of time, but the day the government needs that land or somebody needs that land, they are being pushed, they are being forced to relocate from that land. So customary land rights are not also recognized in Cameroon. Community land rights are not equally recognized. So indigenous communities, they don't have that access and control over land. So for a long period of time, we have been working with various organizations because we know that it's not, one person cannot do this. So we have been working tirelessly with Mbororo and in partnership with the International Land Coalition, where we put up the National Engagement Strategy Plan in Cameroon. And we have been involved in discussions, ongoing discussions on the land reform process in Cameroon, where we produced a paper on the note of on our own position as indigenous people, what we want to see in the new land law. We have also been working, sensitizing the indigenous communities on their rights over these lands, because, for example, you find an indigenous person who has been on a land for about a century, and then this person is being forced to relocate, he is being forced to leave that land. So we have been sensitizing them to know that once you are on this land, you can own this land. For example, if you buy a piece of land, to secure that land, you will title it. But if you look at the pastoralist, for example, the Mbororo pastoralist, he is a cattle rearer and he needs vast land to graze his cattle. So he cannot title a certain number of hectares to secure that land. So most often when people come to say, okay, proof of land use, the pastoralist is difficult for you to trace land use in their areas because they move from one place to another, they are nomadic. So nowadays we encourage them to plant trees that are there forever, to build solid structures that are always there, to have to do something on the land that is visible, that when somebody comes, he will see that this is something that is visible. We have also been sensitizing them to know that women can also own land, because in the community they just know that land is an issue for men. So we are also sensitizing the women that you also have rights, and you can also own land, you can also buy a land, and you can also title that land. So we have also a position that we have sent strictly on women, that women in the new land law, women should have a good position where they can have access, use, and control over land. Because if you look at it critically, women are the highest users of land. They are the ones who plant. They use the land. They do everything on the land, but they don't have control and ownership over land. And for us to have food security, we need to have control over this land. In terms of environmental issues, we have been working with the Baka community and the other communities, because in the Baka community, we have 4 subgroups. We have the Baka, the Bagelis, the Bakolas, and the Bejangs in Cameroon. We have been working with them in terms of climate change and environmental issues. There we have been working on the RED Plus programs, which is the programs on reduction on emission on deforestation and forest degradation. And we had an issue of lack of representation in those areas. But today we have been working to make sure that the women, the youths, and all the indigenous people are involved in the RED Plus process. If you look at the RED Plus process in Cameroon, it is participatory. Yeah. It has been a participatory process that is involving all stakeholders, and the indigenous people are one of the major stakeholders in this forest governance and biodiversity conservation. They are the people who have been conserving this forest using their traditional knowledge for a very long time. And today we have climate change effects that we have to fight. And today we use the traditional knowledge to fight these climate change effects. So we have also succeeded in having a position of representation in area of decision making. So indigenous people are involved in areas of decision making. Then women did not have access to economic activities. Yeah. So today we are encouraging the women, getting them small micro loans where they can start income generating activities. We are teaching them new skills where they can learn a trade and then start doing some businesses around that. That can give them financial autonomy, so that at least they can be financially autonomous. They can have money that they can buy small things in the family and also contribute to the development. So
what is the level of scholarization of the Mbororo youth? Let me put it from the community where you come from. How bad or how good is the situation?
Today, I will proudly say the situation is good. Because at first, in the 1990s, when you come to the university, you will find maybe just one girl or one boy who is in the university. But today, you will find so many graduates from the university. We have so many graduates. We are very proud of them. Some of them have master's degrees. Some of them have doctorate degrees. We are very proud of that. We are very proud of that. Like yourself. Yeah, and then we have some people who work in the government. In many areas, we also have a Secretary General at the Ministry of Livestock, Fisheries and Animal Industry is from the Mbororo community, Mr. Manu Jaji Gidado. So he's also an alternate senator. So gradually, there was lack of representation in areas of decision making, but the Mbororo community is now, through their education, they are penetrating these areas of decision making. So our wish now is to have maybe a parliamentarian, because for over a long time we don't have a parliamentarian.
And will you be running?
Not yet.
Parliamentary elections are coming.
Not yet, but I will support any candidate who will run. And I'm also working on encouraging women to also register massively for the upcoming elections. They should register, they should vote, and they should get into positions that they can also influence decisions. So today we have an emerging class of educated elites. But another challenge we are facing is the issue of employment. Because these youths have been educated, they have come out of school, but they don't have...
Do you sometimes face discrimination? Like, for example, a job opportunity comes up. Mbororo, somebody from the Mbororo community shows up, and another person, and they say, no, we cannot take you because you are from this community. Have you ever had such kind of discrimination or a case being brought to you?
No, for now we haven't had a case like that, because we know that Cameroon offers up equal opportunities. Once you have the talents, you have the skills, and you can write any exam you want to write, and once there is recruitment and you put up your CV and everything, you are eligible, they will take you. The only thing we were trying to talk about was the issue of the fact that Mbororos, being some sort of a minority, and many of them did not go to school, and the few that have been to school, they should be given some sort of a small percentage when we have these public exams. They should be given a percentage and say, okay, if Mbororo people or Pygmy people, they postulate, we can at least, this should be at least done so that they can encourage the others behind. Because when we go back to our communities and we tell them, it's good to send your child to school and so on. And once we are educated, we are working, when we explain to them, they say, oh, we want to be like you, and they easily understand and they easily send these children to school. It helps us also in our advocacy.
There are some rights, like you said a while ago, rights of the Mbororo people that are being violated, or the indigenous people in Cameroon. Can you tell our viewers some of those rights that are being perpetually violated or disregarded in Cameroon?
The issue of, I'll talk about arbitrary arrests. Because they know that the Mbororo people did not go to school, they don't know their rights. So when there is a small problem in the community, they just come and arrest them in disorder. They take them, they go and lock them, and because they are afraid of the police and so on, at times they will end up selling some cattle so as to come and pay.
Like what we have now, the ongoing Anglophone crisis.
Yeah.
Most of them are being intimidated. According to reports.
According to
and
reports,
their cows are being taken away.
And this has been a big fight. It has not been easy because since the start of the Anglophone crisis, the Mbororo people stayed away from this crisis because they didn't want to be involved in this crisis. But at the end of the day, they became targets because they saw raw wealth. They have the cattle, the people come and kidnap them, ask for ransom, people come and kill their cattle for food, people come and carry.
What have you been doing concretely to make sure that the recurrent situation of people, of your brothers' property being taken away? Have you had cases that they have reported to you? Have you taken them to some rights?
Yeah, we have so many cases that have been reported.
Taken to courts?
We have so many cases that have been reported, but now with the issue in the Northwest region that you don't have, the place is not stable. What we are doing is we are looking for advocacy at the international level. I'm coming from the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues in New York, where we had to talk about the massive killings that are going on in the Mbororo communities, not only in Cameroon, but in Africa as a whole. Because if you find in Mali, in Ghana, everywhere is the same story. The pastoralists, they are being targeted. It's some sort of like a genocide on these pastoralists everywhere they are. So we had to put up statements at the level of the United Nations to talk about these killings and then give recommendations to the United Nations that the recommendations can also come to our governments. The governments should try as much as possible to see how they can put an end to these killings of the Mbororo people. They should kind of look for ways to protect these people because the people are really powerless faced with this situation. Because Mbororo people, the way they are minority wherever they are found because they live in isolated areas and they are not concentrated in one area. So when they are targeting them, it's easy to meet them, kill them, and so on, take away their wealth. And so we are talking to the governments to try to see which mechanisms they can put. So we lobby at the level of our governments, we lobby at the level of the United Nations and other human rights organizations.
To be able to make sure that their rights are secured.
Their rights are secured, their rights are respected, and there's putting an end to this genocide. Because if you look at it critically, when something happens around the world, for example, a terrorist attacks a place and 1 or 2 people are killed, you find people talking about it in the media like for days. But thousands of Mbororo people are killed in Mali, in Ghana, and everywhere, but nobody talks about it. It's just silent.
So what explains that fact, that people are not talking about it?
That is why we are telling that the Mbororo people, they have rights. They are human beings. They should also be equally treated as human beings. Their issues should also be put up at the same level. Internationally, nationally, it should be of priority. They are citizens of these countries. So some other citizens should not be important while others are not important. So while they are talking about the Anglophone crisis everywhere, they should also talk about the targeted killings of these Mbororo people. They should talk about it because people are being kidnapped, people are being killed, women are being displaced. If you go to places like Kutaba, like Bafoussam, everywhere you find so many Mbororo people who have been internally displaced. And now we are forced to work on humanitarian action.
As they are moving, like, do they move with their property, their cattle?
No, they can't move with their cattle because
so they abandon everything.
They abandon everything and they leave. You can't find them in Mbororo, maybe who had 1,000 cows today. He has nothing and he lives in Bafoussam.
So sad. That's a very sad situation.
Very sad, yeah.
Is Balkissou Buba married?
Yes, I'm married with 4 kids.
Well,
3 girls and a boy.
How do you manage your home and the heavy or responsibilities that you have? How do you manage the two?
I try to play a balance between the two. When it's time for advocacy, I go for the advocacy works. I go for normally on a day-to-day basis, I work at the Ministry of Social Affairs. So I get up in the morning, go to work close at 3:30 and then come back home. When I don't have any other thing to do, I stay with the family. So I try to be a balanced personality.
You travel a lot?
I travel from time to time, so I try to put up a calendar where I will travel at least few times, not really that much in a year, because at first I travel a lot, but nowadays since I have a small baby who is a year and 2 months old, I travel just some few times. I reduce the issue of traveling, and I also look at priorities, not just traveling for traveling's sake. I look at what is strategic. What am I going to do there? how am I going to put these issues and what results am I going to achieve? So when I look at that, that is how I target the travelers nowadays.
Balkissou Buba, thanks so much for accepting to be guest on the agenda.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be on the TV with you.
You're welcome.